Thank you, Johan, for your contribution. It's really important, I think, to bring the distributors into the discussion, and it's good to have you here. In retrospect, I'm thinking that your presentation should really have been before Melvin's presentation. It should come between the publishers and the booksellers, because by the time the books get to Melvin, you have already done your work. So your work is getting the books to Melvin. And I'd like to open it up to questions. But before I do so, I'm again going to use my privileged position to ask you a question, which is not about cost, but still about distributors. Do you represent the publishers to the libraries who select the books that they're going to acquire to put on their shelves?
Yeah, so remember, the principle is that the one thing that we don't do is we don't do sales and marketing, whether it is to libraries or to to customers. We predominantly do business to business. We have a very, very small percentage where we do business to customer directly via e-commerce, but that's a small portion of our business. It is growing, but still small. But back to your question on libraries, we don't, well, we do and we don't. If the publishers wants to donate to a library or anything along those lines, it's their decision, because remember, we don't buy the books. We warehouse and distribute. So it is their decision to do that. They would then connect us with the specific library, and we would then liaise with the library to make sure that we get the books from us to them, if that is what the publisher wants.
Okay, thanks for your answer to my question. I'd like to invite other questions, comments, both to Johan and also, following what Johan has to say in answer to your question, to Melvin. Unfortunately, Louise has fallen victim to load shedding and has had to leave us. But questions and comments on to Johan, and really to all of us here in a general as well as a specific way. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Monica. May I come in? I just wanted to ask a question that will be directed to both Melvin and Johan. By the way, thank you very much, Johan, for such a wonderful and a useful presentation. What I would like to know is that is the cost of distribution added to the cost of a book? How does this feature in the cost of the book? Does the booksellers consider the cost of distributing, or how does it work? That's my question. Thank you.
Okay, maybe if I can go first, Melvin, and then you can keep me honest and make sure that we're saying the same thing.
Sure.
So from our end, as I said, what's happening is that the sales and marketing function is done by the publisher. So the publisher would sit with Melvin and Exclusive Books and other retailers, and they would negotiate the price, and which is normally the recommended retail price minus a discount of a kind. Okay, so they would negotiate that. Once that has been done, that agreement will be captured into our system, and we would then, if we receive an order, we would pick back, dispatch, and invoice the customer, which is effectively the retailer. The retailer would then pay us, because we invoice on a Booksite invoice. The retailer would pay us. We would apply the function of credit control and collect the monies. So the retailer would then add their margin onto the book and sell it to the end consumer. Okay, so let's just leave that part there. Coming back to the money that the retailer pays us, we then have a back-to-back agreement with the publisher where we have agreed up front, and I'm just going to simplify it, that we take a percentage of that invoice. So let's say the recommended retail price is 100. The agreement was that there is a 45% discount. So that book will be sold to Calvin for, to Melvin for 55 Rand. He would then sell it for 100 Rand or whatever the number is. He would pay us the 45 Rand. We would then, let's say we've agreed that we take 10% just to make it a round number. We take then 4 Rand 50. 45 of, 5 Rand 50 or the 55 Rand, and the balance would be paid over back to the publisher. I think that's sort of in short so it is actually not added, it is deducted, the warehousing and distribution cost from what is invoiced from the publisher or from us actually to the retailer, if that makes sense.
It does. Thank you very much.
Okay, yeah, that's generally the view, and obviously, Johan, we're not really talking about the imported books. So if we're looking at the stuff that comes from the Pearson warehouse in the Netherlands and all of that, that's an additional cost, and the additional complexity is foreign exchange.
Sure.
So Prof, to answer your question, I look at it in this way. There's the physical, which is local distribution, and then the international distribution, which has the added complexity of Forex, and then the e-commerce distribution, which is also slightly different in the sense that we get the stuff from Booksite, but then from Booksite it now needs to go to you as the customer to your house. So there's another and that is, I don't want to complicate things, but there's a cost obviously that we have to pay whoever is the courier. So whether it's a Federal Express or whether it's a DHL or whoever, they also need to be paid. Recently, because of COVID-19, that has also become, it's become the biggest part of the business now, because nobody could go to the shops. And so that's become a bigger factor in our lives than we wanted it to be. Fortunately, there are routing algorithms, and Johan probably knows more about that than I do, but there's ways in which the distributors and logistics people do the math so that, if there's one container that's coming from England or is going to Australia, they share parts of that container. And that brings down the cost a little bit in terms of logistics. In a way, it's almost like when you're booking flights on these cheap flight options, when you look for cheap flights online, they'll give you a price for a ticket almost on the fly, depending on how many other people are willing to also go on that flight. There are algorithms that work out the logistics based on that, and that also changes the cost. So in short, I think the cost is very dynamic at the moment in terms of those kinds of e-commerce channels. On the international side, it's the Forex that's a big factor in that. And as academic, we would love, Prof, if your fraternity as academics in South Africa would write more books and have them prescribed locally, because then it would save us having to, do that extra work of importing titles and also paying the additional freight and taxes on it. I hope that answers your question. It is part of the in other words, the question that you're asking, does it form part of the cost of the book? Yes, it very much does. Yeah.
Okay,
Maybe,
thanks very
maybe,
much.
if I can, sorry, Melvin, if I can just add, you touched on the e-commerce, and I said that that's a relative small part of our business. Just to sort of quickly explain that model from our perspective. So certain publishers, like let's take Bible Society as an example, you can go onto their website, you can order a book or two or how many you want. There's a pay gate that will pop up. You can choose whether you want it to deliver it overnight or economy freight. That is integrated backwards into our system. So if you order onto Bible Society, what the customer doesn't know is that it is linked into the Booksite system. It creates an order. We go pick, pack, hand it over to courier and deliver it to the final customer. It's not a big portion of our business, but it is growing. So why I'm saying this, back to Melvin's question, so there it's in your face to say the book is 250 Rand and it's 65 Rand freight cost if you do it economy, or 85 if you do it overnight. Choose, pay, and it's been delivered the next day or two. So it's directly added on. If you walk into Exclusive Books or into Van Schaik's, the book on the shelf is the final price, what you pay, but obviously included in there all the other costs as we just discussed.
Thank you. Thank you, Johan. I see a hand up from Mokong Mapadimeng. Mokong, would you like to speak? And after that, there's a question in the chat that I will read out for Johan and Melvin. Thank you. Mokong, it's up to you.
Thanks, Monica. Much appreciated. My question is to Melvin in view of what he just said now, appealing to us as authors to actually, or academics, to actually write more books. My concern, I think, Melvin, might be that you guys are dealing more with big publishers. There is a lot of books that have been written and been self-published by authors in the universities. And these books, unfortunately, possibly don't reach you guys, or they don't get that opportunity of being distributed widely because it's individuals who are actually self-publishing. And I'll just cite, for instance, those that I know, few that I know. An example is the late Professor Idumele Mekwa, who has written about 8 books before he passed away, sadly, due to COVID-19 this year. And then I'll give you also Ndlandla Make. He writes a lot of books. Professor Ndlandla Make writes a lot of books, including the most popular one being the Barbarism in Higher Education, and another one, Highness in a Place of Joy, just to name a few. So the question is, you guys, you need to make, perhaps you need to make an effort to access our works that are self-published or are published by smaller publishers or printers, if you can put it that way. So that's what basically I want to just respond to what you said with respect to what you said there. Thank you so much.
Mohong, thank you for the question, and it's a contentious one. Prof, see how it knows exactly how I'm going to answer, and he doesn't like it. Prof, you can comment, and then I'll take over.
No, go ahead, Melvin.
Okay, so what I'm going to say is that because writing is such a personal thing for people, and it's your intellectual property. There's a lot that goes into academic writing in different ways to what goes into fiction. That's the first point. So we respect that. Don't for a moment think we don't. We do. We wouldn't have a business if it wasn't for academics who do the research and do the work in order to produce work that is used by scholars. That's the first thing. The second is, you were not here at the very beginning, which is we live in a world that is connected more than ever before. And because of that, you are subject to market forces. So what it means is, in the same way that when you turn on your radio now, you will not hear on Metro FM the Maskandi artist from Nkandla that the people in the village of Nkandla really love. You'll be hearing Mariah Carey, right? The same thing happens in books, unfortunately. We might not like to believe that we are part of the arts sector, but we are. And Louise also alluded to that, because I also have had input with Monica into the creative industries master plan for government. And we are part of a sector that is arts and culture. And because it is arts and culture, it is up to the individual to choose where they want to invest their money. You take your hard-earned money and you decide you're going to buy Beyonce instead of buying Jub Jub or whoever, right? That's the reality of the world that we live in. It's market forces. And we can, and I showed again previously when you've got your hand up, but let me just finish the point. And again, I showed the previous slide, maybe you were not here, where as booksellers, we can put the latest and greatest of just Wits University Press as an example, because Wits University Press, I think Veronica Clip will be talking tomorrow, and I know her well, and we know Wits University Press. So it's the latest academic work and research from Wits University Press. We can put it in our windows. But if that book has not been chosen by your dean of students, your dean of academics at a particular institution, the student will not buy it as much as we promote it. It's about supply and demand. So my suggestion would be that when you as academics are at your institutions and you're writing work that you believe is relevant and is meaningful, that it should be prescribed. You fight from the inside, because the publishers who publish, you mentioned the major publishers, your Pearsons and your Oxford and so on, they have teams of representatives, reps, just like a tobacco company, just like Coca-Cola or whoever, who will go to institutions to sell those titles to the academics departments of, say, finance, and say, no, rather take this Oxford one because it's published by Oxford and it has this author who's got 20 years experience in finance, etc. In the same way, yourselves as academics need to be marketing those titles in your institution so that they can also be prescribed. That would be my honest suggestion. We can do all the promotion we like, as long as the demand is not there for a title, it will not sell.
Melvin, before Mohan comes back, because I know his hand is still up, there's something that I would like to say about this. You know, it's not really about buying, whether the public or the students buy the books that are already on the shelves. I think that what Mohan was asking was, why do the bookshops place a barrier against representation from small publishers? As a small publisher or as a self-published author, it's almost impossible to get your books on the shelves of a bookshop. They won't even, the bookshops are disinclined even to speak to such small publishers. And I think this is an issue that the bookshops need to
Monica, I think it's easy to make you know, a statement like that, and you know, we say this is what happens, but things happen to people individually. It's not a general statement to be made to say we put barriers. We don't. Of course, we will listen to an Oxford and a Pearson precisely because of what I've just explained. If I say today I need 2,500 titles from Oxford, I'll get them tomorrow. Johan will make it happen because he's got those relationships. They're already in the system, etc. For you as a small bookseller to do that, obviously, then is difficult. It's not your fault that it's difficult, but it would be difficult for you in the same way that as a Maskandi artist in the Eastern Cape, it would be difficult for me to get radio play on Metro FM because I don't have the infrastructure of a Universal Music Group or Bertelsmann behind me. It's the same concept. It's not a question of saying Metro FM is putting barriers to local artists. That's not the case. Bookshops do not put any barriers whatsoever. It is a question of supply and demand. If there is a demand for, and I've proved this, in the figures that I've shown you, I've proved it. There are books that you have not heard of that are selling more than a Pearson title at Northwest University, precisely because the demand is there. There are authors that you don't know about at the University of Johannesburg, where I have a title that sold 720 units in a week, which is unheard of, even for a Pearson title, from a lecturer that is a lecturer at the University of Johannesburg. Why? Because his market demanded the book. And so we were able to create that for him. So even giving you those two examples immediately says to you, Monica, that that's not the case. We do not put barriers in place. It may be that some authors would have gone to a bookshop and the person in the bookshop didn't know what it was that needed to be done, or they went to a person that's too junior to make that decision. Or they went to a senior person and the senior person said to them, they deal with the bigger publishers because they're guaranteed supply. There are many different reasons why a smaller book may not be in a bookshop, but it's not because we're actively putting barriers and stopping people from putting their books in the bookshops. If your book has a market and it will sell, we will sell it because it is in our best interests as a bookseller, and it is in your best interest as an author to sell. So it would be going against ourselves for us to say there's a really good book on isiZulu poetry that is selling and we don't want to sell it. That wouldn't make business sense. The market has to decide what it is that they want to buy. We can try and influence them, but at the end of the day, they choose what they want to buy.
Thanks, Melvin. I see there are difficulties all the way along the line, and we definitely need to speak more to each other about how to resolve those difficulties. But Makong, you wanted to say something more, and Prof. Ngubane, I see you're also on the line, and we need to close the discussions in 2 minutes because we are also victim to load shedding. So, Makong, is there have you received an answer to your question, or do you have more to ask?
It's a follow-up. I want to follow up on Melvin, what Melvin said as part of the debate. I mean, because this is ongoing. I would like to raise 1 or 2, 3 points quickly.
Okay, unfortunately, we don't have time for that. But if you can send us your questions, we will pass them on to Melvin, and we can arrange for another discussion at which we hope to answer more that you have to say.
Or you can just put them in the chat, or you can just put them in the chat.
We already have a question in the
I'll
chat
do that
we don't have time to answer. Prof. Ngubane, do you want to?
I think Simon was not here when we had this conversation earlier, and we took a decision that we need to have a workshop to deal with this matter, because this matter of access is very important, and yet it is complex. So I think we need more time to spend on this discussion, and maybe we will invite Melvin to participate in that seminar shortly, if Anfasa is willing to do so. Because the problem is the issue of demand and supply. You have to create a demand. So if you are a minority and you are a small publisher, you don't have a muscle to create that demand for your book. It becomes a problem, it becomes a barrier. So it's a very important topic that we need to set aside and do justice to the discussion. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you, Monica.
And thank you, Prof. We definitely will have such a discussion. I can see that of the difficulties raised in today's discussion, there's only one way really to resolve them, and that's by talking to each other. But talking to each other, we can't do any more talking today, I'm afraid, because we're going to be cut off owing to load shedding. So thank you all. We carry on with our discussions tomorrow in a different sort of way. Tomorrow we're going to be talking to the publishers, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy that. Thank you for being here, everybody. I'm now signing off.